Today is the continuation of our series on Liberian history. We are focusing tonight on the post-coup Liberia. That's the period between 1980 to present. My name is Dennis Jar, and we'll be joining you shortly. Our guest tonight is Dr. Samuel Ngovo. He's a lecturer at Morgan State University. We're going to be discussing the period from 1980 to today, that is present Liberia. Enjoy the music while we get settled, invite a friend, and let's take a deep dive into Liberian history tonight. All right, once again, welcome to Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, along with my co-host, Danielle. Take it away from me.
Good evening, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are in the world today. Thank you for joining us here on Focus on Liberia. Before we begin, I just want to remind everyone to please like our Facebook page and also to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Focus on Liberia, where we also post our videos once we've done recording. As Dennis said, this is our 5th part to our series on Liberian history. Today, we'll look at 1980 to present day. As he stated earlier, the song you heard when we started was Checks and Balance by the late Quincy L. Burroughs. He passed away 2 years ago today. He was taken tragically from us, but he contributed in a great way to our culture through music. So we just want to tell him to continue to rest in peace. And we also pray for his family, his children, and his parents that he's left behind, that they can manage while grieving. So we remember him today. And today we also remember Liberia's history starting from 1980. As Dennis said, we have Dr. Samuel Ngovo here. He joined us for other parts of this series. And just to remind you about who he is a professor at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, here in the US. He received his Bachelor's of History from Cuttington in 1989, a Master of Arts in History from Binghamton University in New York in 2003. And he holds a PhD in history from Western Michigan University, and he received that in 2011. So, Dr. Ngovo, welcome, and thanks for being here with us again.
Okay, thank you again. Happy to be back for the 3rd time. This is the 3rd time, and the first time I was here on the about the Bani history, and then the last time I was here was we talk about the history of Liberia from independence up to the 1920s. So I'm happy to be here again. And I know this area is a popular, with a lot of Liberians, because people, practically Liberians, you say every Liberian is a historian. And especially when you talk about 1980, including the Civil War, everybody thinks they know everything. So we are here to give at least what we know as a basic fact. We are not here to argue with people. We are here to tell you exactly what we thought, people should remember from the time period. So happy to be back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're glad to have you.
All right, Dr. Ngovo and Danielle, give me a few minutes. I'm going to play you some, just to reflect on some period. We're going to show some pictures for a few minutes. Let our people look at them, and this is going to take us back. I call this period, blood, sweat, and tears. And just watch.
Ages till the same. You're the God.
Some pictures, and we're going to put that on YouTube so you can get the rest of the pictures. But just to whet your appetite, that those are some of the pictures of what took place during the period that we're talking about. Once again, I want to welcome all our guests, all our audience, our viewers across the globe, wherever you are, be in Liberia, other parts of Africa, Europe, Canada. We say welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is part 5 of our series on Liberian history. We have moved from the period in the 13th, 14th, and 15th century. We went all the way, and now we are to 1980 through the present era. So again, Dr. Samuel Ngovo, want to say welcome, and my co-host, glad that you are back.
Thank you again. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Yes, I'm glad to be back and I'm able to join for at least one series, one of the parts of this series. So to start, let's start in the decade from 1980 to 1990. And to begin, let's talk about what exactly is setting the stage in 1980 before the April coup that occurred. So what is going on in Liberia that eventually leads to the 1980 coup?
Well, you can point at one particular incident, that is accumulation of events, that eventually brought over 1980. We have seen a lot of things going on, since over 100 years, American Liberian, have been in power, one party state. A lot of Liberians who have gone to school, university graduate, or those who have gone to foreign country, got their degree and their eyes are open and they are coming back home, hoping for change, and a lot of them thought that change was coming too slow, even though Tobot, who replaced Tubman, seemed to be or had been a sort of a progressive guy, because he did not want to go with Tubman, style of governance, foreign policy. He took different route, and he branded himself as being a non-aligned person, and also, and he was very much active in advocating, things that Tubman was very passive about. For example, in South Africa apartheid system, he was strong against apartheid, talk about Palestinian, he criticized Israel, and all these things, were things that even did not go well with some of Liberia traditional allies, like the United States. That did not go down well with the United States. You criticize here, you have to quite regime South Africa and also Israel. And also, internally, there was, a lot of, poverty. And even though, 1950, I brought a lot of wealth as a result of mining companies, coming to Liberia. Liberia, a very rich, relatively rich in West Africa. But the riches, were just handled by about, 4% of the population. All right. So anger was building up. And you can see that, 1979, when the government decided to increase the price of rice to 50%, you know, and people are now working, unemployment very high. So where will people get money from to buy a bag of rice for, from 22 to I think $30? That was just too much, and it was US dollar. Okay, and also, and that's why I brought over, to people, people who have been yearning for change. They took advantage of that, and spearheaded, demonstration, which we call the rice riot, and government was very much, very concerned, that their power, was shaking. And in fact, Togo had to send for soldiers from Guinea, to come and help quiet down, and also people have been, organizing themselves, pressure group. You have a part Progressive Alliance of Liberia, you have Moja, you have all these people, educated, also wanted a share of the pie. They also wanted political inclusion, but even though Togo was giving some ears, to these cries, about change, but there were a lot of people in Two Party, the old guys who, thought that Togo should not go too fast. With change, and so Togo, he was vacillating. Sometimes he want to change, and sometimes he want to remain the same. The system remain the same. On several occasions there were people arrested after the riot. The arrest riot. Some people were put into prison. Power people and leadership. And remember 79, it was about the same time that Togo was to host the OAU. And Togo did not want this to be something to think, at least it's a good image that you're going to have. And OU require a lot of money because they spent almost like $200 million, to build the conference center, the hotel, and all this, and all these were going on in the midst of poverty. A lot of Liberians, very poor, cannot afford, so all these things contributed. People were put into prison. Somebody did not want people to remain in prison until OU time. He freed them, but later on, he decided to release a little bit of, freedom. That may give freedom, by allowing part to register as the party, became PPP. All these things were moved that someone wanted, to take. But at the same time, people were just tired, and thought that I think political inclusion was the best thing, and the soldiers took advantage of that, also. And, someone was due to go to Zimbabwe for a conference, not a conference, but to attend the independent anniversary or independent of Zimbabwe, and because they have had the second demonstration, and now they are PPP people. They also wanted, Tabo to give up power or so. So Tabo thought that was too drastic. They arrested some people again because they put them in prison, and he was planning to leave to go to Zimbabwe. A lot of rumors were around, that the thing that when Tabo leave, in his absence, they're going to try these people and execute them. So tension was all in the air, and then the soldiers also, took advantage of that. And, a lot of people that doing the rights right. Some people say 40, some people say 200, and a lot of people got injured. So the soldiers stepped in the right time, and took over the state. So those are the things, basic things that led to eventually the 1980 coup.
Okay, and so just to recap what you just said, basically you have the increase of rice, the price of rice that prompted the rice riots. We also have a progressive president.
Alliance Liberia, Progressive Alliance of Liberia. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the leadership, they were all, college graduate, young people, desiring to be, absorbed into the political system, which the Dewey party leadership was very adamant, and so yeah, all these things combined. So that's why I say you cannot just point your finger at one event to say it led to the coup, but those are all, issues put together that eventually, led to the coup. And of course, Liberian people welcomed the coup, and they saw it as, in fact, the real independence of Liberia.
And so when we talk about the 1980 coup, one of the events that took place was that President Tolbert was murdered. Can you please tell us the different theories around who murdered President Tolbert?
Well, the non-commissioned officers, 17 of them, and that, some people say, well, it may not have been only the 17 men, of the armed forces of Liberia, and state coup themselves. There were rumors that some foreigners were involved, but that had not been documented or, proved based on fact, or evidence, but we know that, 17 enlisted men, non-commissioned officers, and that were led by Doe, who was 28 years at the time, and of course, majority of coup makers, came from the southeastern area, and Tobo, was killed in the mansion. Based on my own memory, I think I have seen only one picture of something that looked like Tobo in the white robe, lying down. That's why I have not seen that picture anywhere again, and he was killed, and the coup was announced over radio. And I remember 1980, I was in Banga, I was in the 8th grade, Banga mentally. And the news hit us, and we all got worried because the man who was the vice president of Toba, Denny Wana, he was our bishop. He was the bishop of the Methodist Church. So, we were all concerned what happened, but we found out that later he was out of the country, and we heard that Toba had been killed, and the coup soldiers are taking over.
One of the stories we've heard, I believe it's in the autobiography of President Tolbert's wife. She said the killer's hand was white. So is there also that theory out there that the United States had some hand, the CIA may have had a hand in his murder, or whether it was just a paid mercenary who happened to be white?
Well, that, as I said, we have not, there have not been any established fight, or evidence to prove. But it is based on relationship between the Togo government and the United States. Unlike Tubman, who was, just completely loyal to the U.S., Togo approach, to the United States foreign policy was a little different that make America to have little doubt about continual loyalty of Liberia. All right, and because the non-aligned policy, that Togo reached out to Soviet Union, reached out to people who United States consider as adversary or enemy, so all these things put together to make people to suspect that perhaps United States may have had hand in it, about the death of Togo. But to say that there is an established fight, I have not come across it, to see that United States sent men to, help the soldier to kill Togo.
Thank you. And besides President Tolbert, 13 members of his cabinet were also murdered. And so the narrative, I think then, and especially today too, is that the True Whig Party and Tolbert's government were all Americo-Liberians, or Conga, as some people say. Tell us about those 13 people who were murdered. Were they all Americo-Liberian, or were they of different ethnicities?
Well, most were, but some, I think, have been absorbed into the Americo-Liberian system, Two-Way Party government. Remember, Two-Way Party are gradually bringing in, native people, especially those who have been raised or have accepted their way of life and have become member of certain social institutions. For example, Mason, if you were part of the Mason, of course, you were on your way easily to be recruited into government, and so in that way, you can see that those that were killed, they call them, they say, well, I'm double officials, but I'm not sure specifically, if there were native person among them, but most of them, I think, were, Americo-Liberian. They were connected to the Americo-Liberian.
So what can you tell us about the economy during President Doe's term in this 1980 to 1990 period? What's driving the economy? How is the economy doing, I guess, especially as compared to previously?
Well, though, as we have study have shown that, if I do receive, have the highest monetary support from United States, compared to previous leaders, and some people say over $500 million, and probably more or less, but they say around $500 million to receive during the time, and that was a lot of money, but the money received, were not properly used to benefit, the people, when Doe came to power, the first thing he did, he said he wanted to, increase the pay of the soldiers, but people have also been, wanting to, join the government, and they thought that government would only be a source of, better life, so when the money Doe received, instead of using that, to maybe make life easier for the majority of the people, the money was not used for that, and there were a lot of corruption, especially when though eventually got rid of a lot of people who he suspected, were not, perhaps taking his advice. After the coup, you remember, he executed, some people who, were member of the PRC, and even civilians who have been working in his government. Some of them had to run away from the country. Some left and did not return. Always, thinking that people were plotting to kill him. And there were several coup attempts, whether fake or real. And so the economy was not actually, bad, good at all, because unemployment was very high, of course. And remember, people are leaving from rural area coming to Monrovia. Monrovia is very populated, and most of the people that come, they want job. Students are graduating from University of Liberia, they want job. So with all the international support or monetary support, like from the United States, things were not good at all. And in fact, it's because of this poverty that people were attracted to change. That it could easily that easily led to maybe Taylor succeeding in recruiting a lot of people easily to join the NPFL.
So you talk about misuse of government funds. What can you tell us about the state of electricity in Liberia at that time? Where did we have electricity? I guess, how was it then compared to now?
Well, no, for those time, I remember electricity was, it was not bad, because I remember, TV was all around. People had TV in their private home, and in fact, when every time I, for one, came to Monrovia, wherever I passed, they had current, they had electricity, and so electricity, I don't think was a major problem as compared to now. The war destroyed, the hydro, and so electricity those time was not the major problem. And as people had TV in their homes, and every evening people would go around TV to watch, Liberian musicians singing or drama, so electricity at that time was far better than we have now.
If you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. Our guest tonight is Dr. Samuel Ngovo. We are discussing post-coup Liberia. That's the period from 1980 to present. There are a lot of things that happened during this time, and a lot of us, witness these things, so people have a whole lot of opinion. So I want to give you some chance, or Dr. Ngovo, to lay out for us, if you can subdivide this period from 1980 to present, subdivide, and then give us a brief description of each of those sub-periods so we can have a broader sense. I have a lot of questions coming in from on Facebook. I want you to give some chance so that you can elaborate for us before we go into the discussion and bring in some of our viewers.
Well, if you want to do that in chronology, if you say 1980 to 1989, when the invasion took place, or when Doe was killed in 1990, and then you have the interim period. The interim period started from 1994, up to the election, of Taylor, which ushered in the Second Republic, and then from Taylor time up to the end of from Taylor time up to the election of Ellen in 2005, and because in between there, from after Taylor left, Blair took over, and later on Brian, but 2005 election, and then 2005 up to 2018, the election of Weir. So those are the major you know, maybe chronological, you know, division one could think about.
All right, so going back to this 1980 to 1990 period we were discussing before, can you also tell us about the state of education at that time and what universities were in existence and just the state of education in Liberia in that decade?
Well, a lot of people, you know, a lot of people have graduated from high school, from a rural area or urban area. You know, students had desire for education because many people begin to have, you know, the mind that at least higher education, you know, was a way to alleviate poverty or to leave poverty. You know, so 1980, of course, Cottington and UL, you know, continued to be at Tubman University. At that time, it was technical college. Continued to be the major, you know, university. And but coming to the 1990s, you see the proliferation of school. Even those that were in Monrovia that were just, you know, community college. You know, they have, you know, be, you know, promoted all the way to, you know, university level. And so, and eventually you have so many universities as we have now. You know, I think Monrovia, if I'm not mistaken, even Monrovia will have about 10 universities right now, Monrovia alone. You know, so, but the desire for education was very high among people because a lot of people saw that, you know, education was the way forward. You know, and that also came along with risk because a lot of young folks who were at the university, they were not only, you know, getting their education, but also, you know, they were also, you know, became somehow, you know, turned in the flesh of government because some of them began to criticize, you know, government and those time is, I think, was it 1984 when those sent, you know, soldiers to the university, you know, because of students, you know, continue, you know, criticizing the government, and someone sending underground letter, you know, and all this thing, you know, against corruption, you know, of course, corruption was not the major thing that though said they overthrew the Coup party, you know, but corruption continued to live, you know, even when Edo took over. But then students begin to point out some of this, you know, so education was not just going to learn in the classroom, but also knowing the function of government and criticizing mistake of government, you know, which was not something that, you know, the power be, you know, like. But you can see now, you know, from 1990, universities increased, schools have increased in Liberia, you know, and so that also provide means that people go to school, graduate, and get absorbed, you know, in the job market, which of course in most cases it's not like that. A lot of people graduating from the university find it hard to get a job, you know, and you have Monrovia right now, you know, it's saturated with university graduates, you know, find jobs.
In the beginning of this, we told everyone of your background, and I see you graduated from Cuttington in 1989 and were able to come to the US and obtain a master's later. So did you find a hard time getting a university to accept your degree credentials from 1989 education system at that time?
When out, in fact, 1989, I was to graduate at 8 from Cottington, but after they had gone through my document and they said I had ROTC to do, so I can't graduate without doing ROTC. So ROTC stopped me from graduating at 8. So I have to go back vacation school to do the ROTC in December. So actually we're on campus and our ROTC instructor was Daniel Moe, Connor Moe. You know, and we were on campus one morning while running around. You know, every morning we used to do the running around, you know, so, and we got the news that there had been invasion in Nimba, you know, and And later on, we heard over radio, that rebel had entered conflict or Hutu, something like that. And so kind of motto us where what we do is say, get write your paper on certain topic, about military topic, and then submit it, will send your grade, and that's how we wrote the paper, we sent it. And I came to Monrovia, I went to Monrovia. And based on my knowledge about, African history and reading about various rebel groups, fighting for, fighting government, I never ever thought that, it would take that short of time, for rebels to enter Monrovia. Because we know about other rebels have been fighting for 25 years, and have never entered the city easily. I remember maybe the only exception was Museveni in Uganda, where the rebel entered Kampala. But Liberia, rebel group, they advanced so quickly, and within 2 months, 3 months, they were very close to Monrovia. And so I stayed in Monrovia. I didn't leave. When I entered Monrovia, 1990, I stayed there until all school were closed. My plan was to teach, but all school closed. So we stayed in Monrovia, and 92, school began to open because ECOMO had come. Some school began to open. I started teaching at Haywood, on the old road. And I taught there up to 97. And 99, I came to the States. But I wanted to go to school. But before you go, they accept you graduate school. You have to take the GRE, the graduate rebel exam. So I have to study for that because I left school a long time. I have forgotten all my math skills, and a lot of things. So I have to go for tutorial for some time, a month, before I took my GRE, and Binghamton accepted, my application, and I have to send for my my transcript, and they send my transcript, but I mean, and that's how, when they saw my grades and courses I've done, first they told me, well, we will put you on probation for 1 semester, your performance, then we can take you full time. So they put me on 1 semester probation, and all my grades were B plus, so they accepted me for graduate study, in 2001, and in 2003 I got my master.
That's wonderful, because I think today, often when Liberians come to the U.S. and other countries now, their degrees aren't, I don't know if it's not accredited or what, but sometimes a college will make you do your undergraduate studies all over again. But that's great that back then the studies were advanced enough that they could accept your transcript. So moving to another area of Liberian life in that decade, we see that Malawala Balawala becomes a hit series, and the popular song by Big Steve becomes famous at that time. What can you tell us about the arts and television, Liberian arts and television singing at that time?
Well, maybe you could call it Renaissance in Liberian art at the time. Liberian art was coming to full focus. There were a lot of people like you talked about, some of them, Big Steve, Zach and Jiva, and other people. They started singing, and every night, we will watch TV, and the first thing, before certain program come on, they will play Liberian music. I remember Sweet Red Rose, and all those, and Big Steve, and other people. But also Balawala, they became a major entertainment. In fact, in the evening, once the sound, there was certain sound that we will make on TV, you will see all the children running to come surround the TV, because Balawala coming. And so, it was actually, awakening, making, Liberian culture, to come in full light, to see the potential of Liberian, whether in music or in art or in performance, all these things, So, I mean, we are just sorry that, when they walk in, most of these people with their talent, either die or, they lost, influence. But that time, maybe that was one of the major achievements before the war, for Liberia in the area of art.
And so taking our viewers now near to the end of the 80s, what can you say, what set of events or series of events led to the eventual coup and start of the Civil War in 1990?
You talk about events that led to the Civil War?
Yes.
Is that
well, events that led to the assassination of President Ngovo.
Oh, you know, the death of Ngovo, you know, actually combination of things. Not only, you know, that Taylor, who had worked for Ngovo, which of course is a common knowledge, Taylor worked for Ngovo before, and he fled the country after Ngovo, you know, discovered that he had taken some money. And so Taylor had personal grudge against Ngovo. And we also know that after, you know, initial marriage between the civilian and military people, military government, you know, though most of the civilians who had different view about how government should run had left the government, so Ngovo began to recruit, you know, people who gave him, you know, or to tell him, you know, what he needs to know. You know, bringing in people who were basically people who can, you know, listen to him, you know, to tell him yes, sir, in a Liberian way, you know, not to criticize him, you know, and because he became distrust of a lot of people, so he was bringing people, you know, who he thought, you know, would be able to work with him, and most of these people were just there to, you know, tell him what he needs or he wants to hear, you know. And so he brought in so many people like were very close to him, and some of them, you know, were even from his own ethnic group, you know. And saying, in fact, there were a lot of either makeup or real coup, you know, against him. You know, he decided to bring in people who he trusts, you know, and these people were not telling him often what he needed to hear, whether there was, you know, unemployment, whether people were feeling the pain, you know, in the country, you know, they were not giving him the right information. He surrounded himself with these people, all right? And he often suspected people. And you know how many times those suspected people, you know, starting from, were saying, you know, 1981 when they executed those people. And then from there, you talk about, you know, 1984, 85, you know, Flazameton issue, you know, and when he said Flazameton, one of the border guys, you know, he applied to kill him, you know, that he used 50 caliber machine gun on two cars, you know, which a lot of people thought, you know, that could not be true because 50 caliber machine gun on a car like that, it would have burned it, you know. And also later on, you see about, you know, going back, you know, 1985, and then, you know, Nicholas Podia then, you know, so every time there was death or execution, those feel more and more insecure. So he wanted people, you know, that he can trust, you know, and sometimes these people were not reliable, you know, so tension were building up, you know, those who every time you kill people, their family, you know, family they had left behind, you know, also become somehow your enemy, you know, so they can look for any other way to get rid of you, you know. So it was a convergence of different feelings, you know, either be people who did not like Joe because he had killed their family, or people who were feeling the pain, the economic pain, or people who had left the country because, you know, the threat from Joe. All these things combined, you know, that eventually, you know, saw that Joe became like enemy of the state. You know, that only people who he trusted now, you know, became his own ethnic group, you know. And so, and of course, if that's the case, that means that the other, you know, ethnic group who were not supporting Joe also became enemies. They were considered to be enemies. And that's how, you know, Joe lost power gradually. And even though, if you know that Free Johnson, who eventually caught and killed Joe, in fact, one of the bodyguards for Koyomba when it came in 1985, but he was lucky to have escaped. So we don't know whether, the death of Doe was a revenge, or maybe it was just because, the Crown people felt that they had been targeted by, or the Guillot and Mano felt that they had been targeted by the government in the later part of the regime, and so they decided to revenge. That is the, something that we have to look at closely.
And speaking of Prince Johnson and President Doe's murder, there are some claims that the U.S. backed Prince Johnson. Do we have any evidence to support or deny that claim?
When Doe was captured September 9, 1990, I was actually on Bushro Island. We had gone to look for fish on the beach, Newton, until we heard a siren. That Doe, because Doe did not go to the port, before the siren was blowing on him. He went, to meet General Quino, the Ghanaian general who was the first ECOMO commander. And it didn't take long. Prince Johnson passed, but he did not go with siren. But as soon as Prince passed, and a lot of people to the port, in fact, some people can say, I think we're going to hear gunfire. Now, I asked him, why you think so? He said, because Doe had just entered the port and the field marshal, because on the island, they used to call him field marshal. You see, field marshal on his way with two buses loaded, with his soldiers. He said, so something going to happen there. And of course, as soon as Prince arrived, it didn't take long. We heard gunfire in the port. Suppressive gunfire. And then everybody left the beach. He started running, Carway Junction. They had a cutting free. They were walking, we landed there. And not too long, we saw, Doe with no shirt on him, his hand tied behind at the back of the pickup. And they were taking him to Carway. And that's why, I saw that with my own eyes. I was standing right there when he came and passed, and they carried him. And people were asking, but what about those security, and they said they killed all of them, because according to what we heard, we were not there, I was not there, that when Doe arrived, all those boys he brought with him, almost like 75, they disarmed them. They took all their arms, before they entered the port. And but when Prince Johnson arrived, they allowed because it was Prince Johnson that allowed ECOMO to land in the first place. So he was territory that ECOMO was on, so they could not, disarm him. But what we saw again on video, of course, when Prince Johnson took Doe to the base, we were not there. But what we saw on video was Prince Johnson was trying to connect with U.S. Embassy, by calling, the name, I don't know how he got that full name, Sunshine, Tango calling Sunshine, Tango calling Sunshine, and there will be no answer. We didn't see anybody answer the phone. But, a lot of people think that he was trying to get in touch with the U.S. Embassy. But then he said he wanted to talk to so person, but that person did not pick up the phone. I hear, him talking to somebody, no. So we are not sure whether the U.S. government was directly involved, and whether they gave support to Prince Johnson or gave Prince Johnson any hint, that Doe was on her way to the port. We don't know, but we know that Prince Johnson had visited Doe before in the barrack, and he visited Doe before, and Doe sent emissary, to Prince Johnson base. And Prince Johnson sent rights to Doe, so relationship, seems to have been cordial. We don't know whether Prince Johnson was doing that because he found himself, in a tight situation, and Taylor was on his bike, and he could not go Central Monrovia because of AFL, and so he was around the place there. And but also the death of Doe seemed to have at least open opportunity, for at least for talk, because remember when Doe was alive, the first meeting that was called in Banjul, so they can have the interim government, Taylor, so they can pacify Taylor. Doe said he didn't want interim government, and that was, so the whole thing broke down, but when the court Dona and Doe was dead, before the internal government issue came out again, and that's the time Sawyer, people say, well, let's put somebody there, let's put Sawyer there, and Sawyer took over.
Dr. Ngovo, there's a question on Facebook from Yanni Ngova-san. He said, Dr. Ngovo, do you know anything about an organization called the ACDL?
I heard about it. I read about it. They said ACDL was an organization in the United States, which was organized by Liberian in exile, and like Eddie Johnson and other prominent people were members, of this organization, and they said this organization, were trying to advocate for change in Liberia, and that's what I heard about.
Right, and that's the the Association for Constitutional Democracy in Liberia. And you can talk about political activities in Liberia without mentioning the name of the broad diaspora Liberian play, one of it being the ACDL, for better or for worse. So just in line with that same ACDL question, what can you tell us about the involvement of diaspora Liberians in all these activities, including and not limited to the rebel incursion?
Well, of course, a lot of Liberians who had left Liberia and could not return because of the government, actually wanted change in Liberia, and so any organization that was very eloquent and very effective in advocating for those removal, of course, you will get a good hearing, and that's how diaspora Liberian, try to become member of this organization. Advancement of constitutional democracy in Liberia, Union Liberia Association, in America, all these organizations, some of them were there needed because they thought that, as long as those stay in power or remain in power, they will continue to live outside their motherland. So that's how, they put together. And initially, some people thought that military action would make it other process where, let's go through the constitutional process, but when Taylor, with all the desire for change in Liberia, Taylor decided to hijack the whole process and take the military route, and so there were other people who quietly supported Taylor, and some people came out openly to support Taylor by raising money, to support his effort. But they didn't know that once Taylor see himself about to succeed, he's not going to listen to anybody. And in fact, he will consider you enemy. If you're thinking about trying to, do different things other than what he personally wants to do.
So let's now move to this 1990 to 1997 period when the first civil war is raging in Liberia. Please tell us, who are the major sides in this war and exactly what are they advocating for? What are they fighting for?
From 1990, remember that Taylor, was a major player, of course. Ulimo, a major player, and of course, they still had remnants of AFL, that were led by J. Hezekiah Bowen, but Sawyer, tried to make AFL as a government, soldier, like you said, national army, so they can be considered a warring faction. And in fact, and that's why eventually happened, AFL, they removed AFL as a faction. But then, the leadership, when we talk about the fresh transitional leadership, 1994, after Sawyer had spent some years there, Taylor was demanding that, they needed to have the warring faction involved in the governance, and so, and that's the time they said, well, let's have a transitional system, where the warring faction, if you agree to become member of this transitional government, it means you will not run for election, So IGNU, the Internal Government of National Unity, representing civilian, have to send representative, and Sawyer will no longer be the head, and will have to send representative. And of course, Taylor sent representative, he himself, was not part of it. I think he's saying, either Isaac Musa or somebody. And then also Ulimo saying one Dr. Sirleaf or something like that. And then Pomako became the chair, of the internal leadership, But because, all these interim, government issue, the internal government did not have power. They were powerless because those who control the guns, live outside Monrovia, and Pomako could not control, these people. And so he was basically without power, So the end of 95, and they decided, I think the best thing to do on 94, the end of 94, early 95, decided the best thing to do, they have another meeting, and that meeting, was held so that the various warring faction leader, actually will become part of the interim government. And the belief was that, they will prevail on their fighter to disarm, and that's the time you have Urimo, you have Taylor, Kuma, and LPC, Bole, and this time they said they're going to have a new chairperson, and Wetton Sangauro, became the new chairperson, so he was the chair, and Taylor, Kuma, and Bole, became member. And Roosevelt Johnson, of course, gave him ministerial job, but Kurma and Taylor, as you know, later on, I think either conspiracy or somehow they tried to get Roosevelt Johnson out of the picture, by studying also gonna, conspiracy that, they charged him for murder, and tried to get rid of him, which eventually led to a big fight, in Monrovia.
So for some of us who have never lived through a war, I think it's a little hard to conceptualize sometimes. So help us to understand what everyday life is like during this time period, because what I'm hearing is there was some form of government during this time, a transitional government, but yet people are also fighting at this time. So what is everyday life like, and how are all these things occurring at the same time? Having a government, but still there be no peace in the country.
Well, 1990 to 94, during Sawyer time, Sawyer government was limited to Monrovia. In fact, the first year Sawyer did as a way of trying to maybe weaken the Taylor, because Taylor too, created a government in Banga, and the first thing Sawyer did in order to maybe undermine Taylor government was to say they're going to change the money to the national currency, all right, to a new money. And of course, people in Monrovia, could not go out of town, to buy, even only those who used to take the risk, and sometimes if you are lucky, you can pass through, and food was very, very scarce. I live in Monrovia. I lived in Matadi for some time, 1990, when ECOMO arrived. you know, I crossed over to Bushro Island, and during the time of Sawyer time, Bushro Island life there was far, far better than in Monrovia town itself or the suburbs. You know, go all the way to Peaceville, things were very, very difficult there. And when you move to Bushro Island, it's like you live in another country because they have light, they have cold beer, they have stout. And after 4 months when I crossed, they gave me rice to eat. I couldn't, the rice could not pass through my throat. You know? Yeah. A friend of mine that saw me, you know, he said, "My man, your eye bigger than your head." You know? And we went, he said, "My man, let me cook some rice." We went, they had a chicken cup, you know, cooked chicken in the cup, and he cooked jollof rice. He took me, "My man, eat." You know, he brought beer. The first spoon I took, it couldn't pass through my throat. I told him, "My man, I can't eat now." You know? He told me, "Oh, my man," he said, "you're looking too bad." You know, I said, "But," I asked him, I said, "But where you getting the rice from?" He said, "Oh, I get some, you know, my man on the dish. You know, they always come here, they bring bacon rice." When I looked behind the door, I saw bacon rice. I have not seen rice for more than 4 months. You know, we used to drink hot water, and sometimes we eat banana. You know, banana, the root part of the banana, you root it out, and the cabbage, we used to cook it and eat it. That's why we ate until 1990 when I crossed, before I ate rice. And it took me a while before even a guy used to eating rice again. But across still were better. But you know, the war brought everybody to their knees, because I saw some people, what they were doing, I couldn't believe it. I saw the man who was one-time minister, Otelo Gonga. You know, I saw him under the umbrella sitting down, and they came around, they were selling pakana. They used to soak pakana in the water with salt. You know, they say, "Rock your jaw." You know, you eat because you don't want your mouth to lock up, so that you can be shaking your mouth. All right? And I saw people, you know, who are new, and some family member, you know, and you know, Prince Johnson, once he know that you are educated, take you to the base, you know, and he gave you a uniform. You are a soldier. If you commit a crime, he will treat you like a soldier. But he was very harsh on his boys. He was very tough on them. Because Prince Johnson realized that with civilian on his side, he get better character. You know, people will look at him different. Because even on President several times, he killed some of his boys who used to put rope on looking town, inside looking town. You know, those boys will go put rope, and I said still in the church, you know, collecting things from people. And he know about, he sent his people to grab you and he will kill you. But we were there, we used to leave from looking town, we would go all the way to Cardwell, we go all the way to White Plains, you know, Closerville, to look for cassava and look for peanuts. And when we bring it to town, you know, we said that people never have, they have money. You will see people with money, but they don't have anything to buy. You know, so those are the hard life where, and sometimes, you know, when it's too risky to go out, you know, when you bring something to buy, you go buy a cigarette, you know, you start selling cigarette. You know, those are some of the things that we did to survive.
Right. Dr. Ngovo, there's a question on Facebook from Christopher Wlotti Tobasi talking, and in line with his question, I also want, there were reports of different kinds of atrocities. One of those, according to what Mr. Tobasi is asking, is said it was reported that President Doe buried like 400 Nimba citizens, mainly children, in Wales. That's one. You know, he wants to know whether that's fact or fiction. I also want to add some massacre and just some stories around it. There was this Lutheran church massacre. There was a Dupo Road massacre. There was massacre in Bakedu, massacre in Campley. All those different massacres, you know, if you can just give us a synopsis of the different massacre and who was responsible according to whatever investigation that was done.
Well, some of the massacre we're talking about, like the one that said the buried, you know, I didn't see, I didn't go there to see. I heard it. I didn't go there to see. Lutheran massacre, I was in Matade. In fact, it was so good that some of us did not go. Maybe it was just we were not our time. Because a lot of people thought, you know, taking refuge in the Lutheran church, you will be safe, you know. So I was in Matade, and I didn't go there. All right. but people who went there, and the belief was the majority, that went there were either, either from Nimba, and other people mixed, and so, but that, the belief was strictly on AFL because it was proving that AFL soldiers went there, and dedicated, and they were led by one Tilly, all right? Yeah, and they say about 600 people were killed there, all right? And we also heard about other massacre, Habel massacre, the massacre that took place in Habel. And that the same special investigative team, and at the end of it, they fully believe again, AFL. Even though some people say it was Taylor people that did that massacre to fully believe to make AFL unpopular with the people. We heard about that Habel massacre. All right. Bakadu, we also heard about that. There were so many different massacres that took place, and but the one that we used to, people maybe that come from there tell you, that's what we remember. But I was not able to go. The Lutri massacre, I passed there, after the whole, thing had taken place. But still, it was under some sort of restriction. They couldn't allow people to enter. That's the only one. But all the other I heard about them. But and sometimes, when they had newspaper, Monrovia, when they begin to print newspaper again, like Touchlight, they used to sell the story, about this, but they said they not show picture, of this. They show picture about Habel and then Lutri, but they want to talk about the put them in the well. I heard about it, but I did not see picture of it, and I didn't go there. Which well?
Okay. Question. During this war, the use of lots of weapons. Where are these weapons coming from? Where are we getting the money, or the different groups? Where are they getting the money to buy these weapons?
Well, I can't tell because I was not. I guess they were anyway. But suspicion was that they were getting a weapon from in a neighboring country, and for example, there was a suspicion that Urimo people got their weapon from Sierra Leone because they started. Urimo was a combination of Mandingo and Crown, group. But later on they split. They start fighting each other. First in Sierra Leone before they enter Liberia, and but they said their weapon were coming from Sierra Leone. They got their weapon from Sierra Leone. But sometimes also they said they got it from their enemy. That they killed somebody and took their weapon. But for Taylor, we know that weapons were coming in through Ivory Coast. Either from Burkina Faso or Libya. There was no direct connection to CA, but that's what we heard because every time we hear that new weapons they have tried. And that weapon cannot just come from the sky. It has to come from somewhere, but we have now, there was suspicion that, some of the weapon, like initially, Joe got weapon from Nigeria because he was a very good friend of Babangida. And also when the war started, Joe initially got weapon from Nigeria, but Taylor, I think either from Burkina Faso or maybe Libya or even Ivory Coast, which I can't confirm that. But most of the time they will say we got a weapon from people who were killed. Free Johnson, say we got a weapon from Katie, some Taylor people, and also, when they had a clash with the old man after the Doe was killed, they said they ambushed on Doe people and took a weapon. All right. And of course, Free Johnson, when he visited Doe, before Doe died, when they were a good friendship, Free Johnson was able to get some weapons from Doe and took to him base.
So moving to the end of this period, in 1997, there's an election. So what led to the election? How was the election organized? Who decided now would be a good time to have an election? So what happened before the election in 1997?
Well, we have had several interim government, And the international community, were getting tired of the Liberian war. It had dragged on for so long. And of course, they have to spend money. And other countries, have sent soldiers. There were countries initially from West Africa and later on, East Africa, Tanzania, and Uganda sent soldiers. And most of the expenses were shared by the home country, even though international community or the United States sometimes, help, but it was taking toll on their own, country. And so they thought that election perhaps would bring peace, and they have postponed the election several times. Okay, so in '97 they thought that I think they should have the election once and for all right, so that peace will come. And of course, the election took place in the midst of fear. Taylor still have a greater hook on large portion of the country. All right. In fact, a lot of people in Monrovia thought that Taylor had buried some of his weapons, that he doesn't win the election, the war will start all over. And there were a lot of people who left from rural area, that came to Monrovia, and they said, in fact, the war prolonged because of Monrovia politicians. So the only person that is strong, to govern Liberia at this point in time will be Taylor. And so '97 election was held in the midst of fear. And it's the fear that delivered election to Taylor.
Interesting. So who else ran in that election besides Taylor?
There were other people, Liberian National Union of Dr. Moneyback, took part in that election. And I think there were other people where I can't remember all of them now, but most of them, could not even win, any considerable percentage. Even NDPL, former Dual Party, and also, but probably if they had united against Taylor, maybe they would have done something. But they were fragmented. All the politicians were fragmented, different political systems, and so Taylor used his, his military, fear to put in people that he doesn't win. I mean, I think you heard that, the song they used to sing. You came and by, I will go for you. All those things. And so, Taylor eventually won the election, even with politicians who had, no hand in, or who were not faction leaders, they thought that, because of the massacre and the killing, Taylor was unpopular and they go to the barrel back, they will win him. But he eventually won, and they say he won because of fear that he didn't win, the war will start all over again.
So before we move on to the 1997 to 2003 period, Dennis, do we have any questions from Facebook?
Right. There was a question on the lines of ethnicity during the war about the death toll, about how, which ethnic groups were mainly targeted or killed. And the question say, were there, American Liberians also killed? So Moses Pacer is asking, say, American Liberians were only killed in 1980. Then during the coup, the 1990 war did not target the American Liberians. So talk to us about the death toll based on ethnic groups during the war. That's the kind of general question that is on Facebook.
Well, first, Liberian Civil War had ethnic tone, but it was not like a civil war that took place in Rwanda, that it was strictly based on ethnic group. It was not like that strictly in Liberia, even though it had ethnic tone. When the war came to the head, I mean, people who felt threatened, like the crowd people felt threatened, they had to defend themselves. Or if the Giro felt threatened during those times, they had to defend themselves. So all those. But to see that, American Liberians, for example, whether they were targeted, I can't remember that, that they were, what I know is the, during the earlier part of the war, those saw that, a lot of people, especially people who were from Nimba area, were no longer, were more or less considering him to be enemy that had saw himself. So he tried to broaden his own power base, and he went on radio and said, Mandingo people are citizens, even though we know that we know Mandingo have been in Liberia long, even before the coming of the settler. But he declared that, over radio, and so so the cry in Mandingo became almost like, being one side, against the DO and Mano and maybe other people who were their sympathizers, and that's how targeted killing came about. When Taylor entered Liberia, he was not only targeting brown people, but also targeting Mandingo people, and a lot of Mandingo in Nimba, fled to Guinea, and that's how it was easy for them to easily organize to have limbo, but all was about loyalty, because there were some American Liberians cheering, who eventually, took side with Taylor. So other people thought that, perhaps they had John Taylor as a way of trying to revenge against those for the death of, their parents. And so that's how it was understood, at least from our point of view. There was some of this, there you have either good rich, with Taylor, Bright, or with Taylor, all those people. So that's how we look at it.
Okay, so let's move on to this 1997 to 2003 period when Taylor is president. So we know that during this time there isn't complete and total peace. So what is he able to accomplish during this time, and or at least what is he trying to accomplish in the country at this time?
Well, when Taylor became president, a lot of people thought there would be total peace, but Taylor, also began to look for loyalty. That if you are not with him, you are against him. All right. So a lot of people who fell off with Taylor, have to take refuge, outside the country. All right. And also it was believed that, Taylor had not, even though disarmament had started, but Taylor had not disarmed altogether. And so there were a lot of people who thought that, I think Taylor would try to keep himself in power forever, And so 1999, you have this people, the loyal people who organize themselves, against Taylor. Because Taylor became president in 97, 2 years, law were organized, the law group organized, and Taylor accused Guinea, of, supporting these people. And of course, as I said, when Taylor arrived, took over Nimba, a lot of Mandingo fled to Guinea, and some of them, their business were destroyed or taken over by local people. All right, and so they organized themselves into local forces and they launched a rebel movement. Okay, because they thought that, the only thing Taylor will understand is violence. Taylor going to stay there forever. All right, and that's why he was fighting for all along. So he's president now, he's not just going easily going to go. Even if there will be another election, he will want to, raise the election and stay there. So, that's why the another rebel group, came about in 1999. And of course, the war degenerated quickly, and eventually led to forcing Taylor to leave power.
So what can you tell us about the economy in this 1997 to 2003 period? What is driving the economy? Where are we getting revenue from at this time? What is it like?
Well, when Tiller took over, Tiller continued to get money from Fines to, even when he was in Banga, when Fines were under his control, he was still getting money from Banga, and I mean getting money from Fines too, and also other investors, that have thought that they could come back and try to open businesses. They have to pay tax, and of course, tax was the major thing. I remember when I was working with Hewu, up to '97, we had to pay income tax, even though we're making just small money, but they had to take income tax with you because they got to report it to government, you know. So and people try to rebuild their life, and small businesses, and those who have rubber farm, and you will need permission to be able to, you know, uh, restart your business. And that Hatila, was surviving. And then Tila was also selling a lot of logging companies, cutting down a lot of trees. Southeastern area, during Tila time, the logging industry boom, you know. And also, diamond. Remember when Tila was there, he was getting a lot of diamond, not only from Liberia, but he was also getting diamond from neighboring Sirleaf, you know. So all these things help, to nurture Tila government, during this time. In fact, there were a lot of diamond offices open in Monrovia that people used to bring diamond from Sierra Leone, and sell it over there. So all these things help to nurture Tila government. And and I remember the U.S. rate at that time. I think it was around what, uh, either 10 to 1 or less than that. So
Wow. um, so during his presidency, we also see the Second Civil War, or the World War II, some people call it. What prompted that? Was there something he did, or something in particular that rebels were fighting him for at that time?
well, as I said, most of those that were fighting in law forces, the uh, uh, majority were of Mandingo group, but they were not all Mandingo. There were Fere, there were Loma, there were Bandi people, all mixed, you know. But the main thing have been these people felt that they have been excluded from government, or they have made them to live outside their home. And I know the commander for the law forces, Sekou. I know Sekou. I knew Sekou from Banga. Not that we were friends or personally, but I knew him, as a businessman in Banga, doing the whole time. He was doing business, and so they felt that they needed to come back and take over their rightful businesses. Those who have been driven out because of that, or their business have been destroyed. They thought that they will never come to live peacefully in Liberia as long as Taylor is sea power. So and you know that's why really energized most of them to take up arms. If I when they came, and now there were people who maybe were not maybe considered Taylor enemy, but they saw opportunity that becoming a member of the movement, they will be able to have some benefit for how accumulate certain wealth or what, so that have make a lot of people, you know, uh, just join the law forces and to wage war until Taylor can leave power. And so that's it. Those who were considered as refugees, they thought that they had to come back home and they had to use military means to get rid of Taylor.
And so in 2003, we see an end to the war, and we also see Taylor going into exile. tell us about the series of events that led to the peace agreements and Taylor's exile. What was happening before we got to that point?
Well, law forces launched a war against Taylor, and Taylor initially said he could not leave power. He could not leave by force of arms. But when he started losing ground, he changed his mind. And people have been, outside Liberia, inside Liberia, people have been telling Taylor, perhaps if you leave, Liberia, peace will come. And international community, even the U.S. President George Bush, said that Taylor needed to leave in order to bring peace to his country. And Taylor said he could not leave, But there were pressure from ECOWAS, and other African countries, telling Taylor, the best thing to do, better to leave. In fact, some people were giving example of Doe. He said Doe insisted that he can't leave until he was caught, and killed. And also, you have time, it's better for you to leave peacefully, And after a lot of negotiation, you can see OAU representative, ECOWAS, other groups, they all have to come to Liberia most of the time, talk with Taylor, and to prevail on him, that you don't want the war to come to Monrovia, like happy doing good time, to spare the life of people, and after a lot of pressure, before Taylor, he was talking about his own security now, where will he go? And Nigeria said where they can get him placed, where he can go, and Taylor finally agreed to leave and to leave his vice president, Moses Blair in place. Moses Blair took over. I think I don't know how long he stayed there. I think maybe 4 months or 3 months. And then Brian, a new agreement, brought Charles, G. Brian, to take over until there will be another election. There was another election in 2005.
So we know of Lima Bowie, the Nobel Peace Prize winner. Can you tell us a little bit about her movement and exactly how the women were involved in helping to obtain peace in Liberia?
Oh, women were a strong voice. Even when Taylor, was called in Ghana, for a meeting, women were produced a strong voice, unified, voice for peace, and organization and group, advocated that, they didn't want another war in Liberia. All right, they didn't want another war in Monrovia. All right, and you can see, women group, women organization, stood up to advocate, and their efforts were actually, supported, by international group, who recognize their effort, and of course, the lady who received the Nobel Peace Prize along with Ellen, she was one of the strong advocates, of peace, in Liberia, especially, for women, because during the war, even though men died a lot, but women struggle, women struggle. Some of them died. Some, were left with family that they had to cater to after their husband were killed. So a lot of things went on in their life, and they didn't want to see the repeat of this. So their strong voice, were heard every time there was a meeting, and that's why eventually pressurized some of these faction leaders, to agree to peace. Even I think Taylor that also had really, influenced Taylor leaving, so women were at the forefront. Their voice, unified voice, was very powerful. that help, to bring peace. And because of that, you see a lot of them, during the election of 2005, it was in fact women that put Ellie into office. Yeah, it became overwhelmingly, they voted for Ellie in 2005 election. All right. And but because of that, they were able to give peace prize, they shared peace prize to the lady, I think, what her name,
Bowie.
Yeah, Ellie to share the Nobel Peace Prize. And so, women, I hope, the history of Liberia will not forget their effort, the effort of you women in restoring peace, even though they didn't take on to pressurize, but, their voices, were very forceful in bringing peace.
If you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the Liberian history, that's specifically the period from 1980 to present, which we refer to as the post-coup Liberia. Our guest tonight is Dr. Samuel Ngovo. He's a lecturer at Morgan State University. He's helping us to discuss this period. We want to continue to ask your questions, and as we wind down, back to you, Danielle.
So in 2003, you mentioned we have the peace agreement, the Accra Comprehensive Peace Agreement. Please tell us a little bit more about that agreement and what is stipulated.
Well, the Accra Peace Agreement was just provided a framework, how the election going to be held, and who are those, and they emphasize that they have to abide by the Liberian Constitution. That means everything stipulated in the Constitution. They don't violate the Constitution. But maybe, the only thing would be the voting, the time for voting. Maybe that could be, something that they could work on. But to make sure that, election was held as it had been done in Liberia. And it will be free and fair. And they should have, election commission that is neutral, that will be able to, deliver, result, that will be acceptable to people. All those who participated will be certified that, they were not cheated, even though often it was not the case, But the peace agreement, basically provide a framework as to how the election is going to take place, and how the Constitution should be respected, and how, if there's any dispute, it's going to be handled by the court system. That nobody going to, commit themselves to taking up arms because they did not win, in the election. Okay, and of course that also means that the internal government, lifespan will come to an end once the result announced and the new president sworn in, and that's what happened. Gilbert Bryan left office, and Ellie was sworn in.
So can you tell us about the transitional process? How was it decided that Charles Judy Bryan would become the transitional president?
When Moses Blair took over, I think he became either the 23rd president, even though he stayed there a very short time, but the belief was that Blair, there is a continuation of Taylor, and so the lawyer group would not accept that, and so they came up with the plan that, somebody different should head the transitional government pending election, and that's how Gilbert Bryan, was elected, in Accra, and then eventually, took over, because instead, Blair could not stay there and supervise the election because in fact, it considered to be, just continuation of Taylor, because he was still a vice president.
And can you tell us what ECOWAS and UNMIL's roles were in helping to maintain peace in this 2003 to 2005 period?
Say that again.
What was ECOWAS and UNMIL's role in helping to maintain peace in the country in 2003 to 2005?
ECOWAS and UNMIL, the major role was, to make sure that, the peace will be sustained, and and of course, civilian, rules or civilian authority, will replace the military-like posture that we have in the country, and people will go back to their normal businesses, like resettlement, bringing people back from refugee camp, and from neighboring country. And of course, UNMIL was involved in resettling people, sending back to their villages, and transporting them, and also giving them, at least a starting point. Some they give them rice, so they can go start that life, and also, you have police, international force there, to be able to, easily diffuse any tension, in cities or wheresoever, But overall, ECOMO and UNIMIL, were trying to sustain the peace, preserve the peace, and make sure that, Liberia will return to normalcy if there's anything like normalcy, and UNMIL, had their own radio that could reach almost every corner of Liberia, advocating or talking about peace. People should go back home. And sometimes they talk in different, Liberian languages, encouraging people to come back. If you are in Sierra Leone and then neighboring country, closer to the border with Liberia, you could hear UNMIL radio, encouraging people to return to their villages, and all this. So, and that's how, both work together to maintain the peace and to bring normalcy to Liberia. So basically those are the things they were doing, and also subsidizing, government, and because UNIMIL had to take the responsibility, UN, to pay their soldiers, to pay their police, and wheresoever government would fall short, they have to come in, and but actually, they wanted Liberia to be able to, govern itself like it had been before. And of course, the mentality, of fighting, for power should be, erased. And perhaps the most important thing that they did was the disarmament, getting gun, giving money for gun, and some people will get 200 or 150 or $300, for every arm you brought. So it was a way of trying to make Liberia arm free, because a lot of people were afraid of going back home once there was armed, life would be terrible. So, arm for money, I think was a very good way also to help Liberia, peace.
And so I know we're running out of time. So I'll just get to 2005 when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf wins the presidency, and then she's president from 2006 up until January 2018. Help us understand, one, what were the reasons that Ellen Johnson was elected? What about her resonated with the people? And then two, let us know what her successes and failures were.
Well, early, as I said, early was elected 2005 based on raw support you have for women. Women overwhelmingly voted for Ellen. Okay, and women, and one thing Eddie, how we get credit for was Eddie was able to work hard to reduce Liberia debt. Remember, a lot of money Liberia was owing, especially to the United States. It was early time that the United States decided to waive the debt, so they can start with place like, all right, and also to reestablish Liberia connection with international body, you know, uh, uh, international organization, all right, and also be able to bring foreign country again, to reestablish diplomatic ties with Liberia, you know, and uh, and because it will be through that way, the funds will come from people who wanted to support effort in Liberia, and also, and basically to say, after many years of war and destruction, Eddie was able to put Liberia back on the map, literally in terms of, people having, trust, uh, uh, and once again seeing Liberia as independent country, as, trying to pick up the pieces, during the war, Liberia had become as a failed state, but now, people start to look at Liberia, as a country that could be on the path for, lasting peace. So, and the second election of Ellie, of course, based on her achievement in the first term, people thought that, they could give her a chance again to be able to, maybe build on what had been done already, and instead of bringing in somebody, that they got to start all over, especially the person that was running against Ellie, they saw that, uh, uh, you know, you were not that experienced to be able to attract international attention, and be able to solidify, Liberia peace. And also, people thought it could, again, combination of having coalition, bringing different people on board, and sometimes, uh, promising people job, and these people, will be able to influence their constituents to vote for early, so all these things happen, and help early to win again for the second time, but it was like, let's give her a chance. She did well the first round, so the second time, because it will bring in somebody new, totally strange to the job, you know, it will be difficult, to be able to, pick up the pieces, so where Ellie left. So, and that's why she won the second time.
During her second term, we see the occurrence of the Ebola crisis. Looking back now, what were some things we could have done to prevent it or mitigate the issue? And also, how many people died during that epidemic?
Many people. That one we say, they say Liberia more like 4,000. I mean, I'm not sure, but they say around 4,000 died in Liberia, and but because of the health system in Liberia, and now very strong, and Liberians, were not proactive, in terms of looking at the kind of epidemic, that break out. How are you going to approach it? We had never had that kind of case before, and so, uh, people were not well educated, and until they begin to abide by rules, of how to avoid, contact with people, that reduce the chances of spreading, every area, that had a lot of people die initially, people didn't know what to do because they had never experienced that before, and of course, money that was pumped in during Ebola time, there are reports that, money were not used fairly, or did not benefit the people, or, maybe it was not used effectively, You know, I was just reading about Sierra where people who were in charge of Ebola money now are on trial, you know, in order to pay the money back, you know, money that made the misuse, you know. And I know similar thing happened in Liberia, you know, that money that were invested were not properly used, you know. But how are we going to go about accounting for the amount of money that was put in and what all it was used for, you know, and that's a challenge now, you know. So Ebola issue, maybe a lot of people would have died if the health system was very effective and government had invested in the system. So maybe that was something, you know, that you know, early that tinted early administration, you know, as something that, you know, it should be accountable.
And so as we move to 2017 election and we see current President George Weah elected, what can you tell us about the state of Liberia at that time that helped to get President Weah elected after 3 tries?
Well, you know, first, the youth, you know, the youth, especially even those who have gone through the war, 40 years of war, you know, and thought that, you know, they needed to change the system. That means that the old folks have been there for a long time. So let's bring in new person, let's bring in young blood. Let's bring in somebody who look like us or who grew up like us, you know. And so, and we are brought, you know, to his campaign, this, you know, popularity that he gained as a soccer player, you know, that a lot of young people can relate, you know, to, you know, I think if he become president, you know, he will cater to the young people because, you know, he's a young man and he grew up like us, you know, so he will cater to us, he will listen to us, you know, it won't be like the old folks, you know, who want to go the traditional way, you know, or they are very conservative, or those, you know, so where will be the one. And then the collaboration, you know, we have with, you know, other party, you know, who also have to strengthen, you know, his effort, you know, and so all this help where, you know, his popularity as a soccer player, and the youth, you know, overwhelmingly thought that, you know, their life will be better, you know, when he is elected. I'm not sure whether that is happening now, but all those contributed, you know, to his success, that they would rather vote for young person than to vote for older person, especially somebody who, you know, have been in politics for years. You know, they want to bring somebody, a fresh blood, a fresh person who may have some, you know, international connection, you know, that will help the country. And that's why, you know, Weah was able to win the election 2018. The youth and his popularity with the youth, you know, and that helped you a lot. Most of them were at voting age, you know, and registered to vote.
And so looking at Liberia today, what would you say the challenges are that President Weah's government faces? What are their challenges?
Well, there are so many, you know. One would be unification, to unify the people, you know, is a challenge because you don't see that Liberians are still unified, you know, and that can just tell you a little bit about, you know, politics, you know, and various political party, and you know, whenever they want to criticize, you know, a party, you know, they add their emotion. You can see that, you know, there are certain things that they think they are not getting, or certain things that are continue, you know, to persist, you know. So to unify the people, to get, you know, to deal with corruption, you know, which is like cancer in Liberian society, you know, and people can talk about it that, once I become president, corruption will be gone. But once you get there, and people that are around you, that you don't want to offend, or you don't want to get rid of them, they become mere obstacles to getting rid of corruption. So, corruption, unification, unemployment, a lot of people, a lot of young people, don't have jobs. And so any little thing always spark a fire. You see people, demonstrate. Even though we have a lot of young people, during the election, but you can still see when there is a little call for demonstration, you will see thousands of people getting in the street, and so the challenge for him is, will he be successful in his first term, to unify the Liberian people? And that means making government inclusive, bringing on board opposition, not only people who are being CDC, they say, oh, we have been in the ring for long, and so we are there now, this is our time. That's not how you unify the country. All right. And also the young people who stood in the sun and the rain to vote, you have to listen to their problem. Are you going to find ways to create jobs for them? Or maybe training. If they are not qualified for job, are they going to have some sort of training, that will make them qualified to become, employable? All right. So all these things are challenges that, the government, face. And also, the international community, you can't afford to isolate, old friends, people who have been traditional friends, and you can't afford to marginalize them, and so there's a challenge to be able to sell, your government, your policy, to international community to attract investment, how investors are going to come, and all these things. And of course, the last one will be, of course, security. Now, UDMA gone, ECOMO gone, now the security of the country lies in the hands of Liberians themselves. So how best you going to do to maintain the peace, that you are achieved or you are inherited. So those are challenges now, faced by the current government.
And so one of the reasons people study history, they say if you don't know where you're coming from or where you've been, then you won't have any idea as to where you're going. So that in mind, looking back on the last 30, 40 years of our history, what can you say we can learn from our history and put into practice for today?
First of all, Liberia, do we have common identity? Can we have anything that we can identify with that can promote unity? Are there things that serve as a symbol of division, that divide us? Are we looking at those? Because they have been there, and what can we do, to unify the Liberian people? What can we do to do something that will be able to serve as something that we all can relate to? For example, in 2013, we were called in Liberia, by the Governor Commission under Sawyer. They sent for all the said they wanted Liberians who have studied history, should be able to rewrite the history of Liberia. That we include all ethnic groups. That means history that all the 16 ethnic groups will find themselves, and then in that history, we're going to emphasize, things that we have in common, and things that we can look at and say, well, once we are Liberians, these are things that about, Liberian by, and even though we have differences, but there are a lot of things we have in common. So we should have that kind of history, and it should be taught in schools, in all Liberian schools. You can't say you're Perry man, you can't say you're Loma man or Kissy man, but you don't even know the history of the people, the tell the Fede people, you know. And then some people are Bassa, but they don't even want to speak Bassa language. You know, you speak Bassa to them, they tell you that they can't understand it, you know. And so, unlike the Ghanaian, you know, West or you are Ghanaian when you speak Twi, you know, the Ghanaian people they will hear. Nigeria, their language, they speak it, Nigerian Fijian English, you know. There are a lot of things that unify them. If you go to Sierra Leone, the Creole, no matter whether you are Timini, you are Mende, you are what, you know, the Creole, everybody speaks Creole. You know, it's a lingua franca, you know. So we have now have something that we all can look at to unify us as Liberians, you know. So that's a challenge. Okay, how are we going to do something about that in the modern era? You know, are we going to have a history of Liberia where all the 16 ethnic groups will find themselves and they can identify themselves in that history? You know that even though you are not a Griot, but you can learn about the Griot people. Even though you are not a Loma, but you can learn about the Loma people. You know, and so we learn about each other and identify those things, you know, that we have in common and promote those values. You know, so are we going to do that in this modern era? So those are the challenges that we think we can do. You know, they are doable. You know, but who's going to take the first step? Who the leaders are going to take the first step? The history book I talk about, when we went, we had all the outline and divided chapters to write. And the first thing, I mean, your UN was there, represented by UNESCO. You know, they said, well, you know, to write the history book require money. But we would like the Liberian government to come up with the seed money, the first amount, and then we can, you know, match the amount that the Liberian government gave to use the money for research. When we left, we never heard back again. They said the government did not give the money. Because what? They have politicized the whole idea. You know, that we know the history book are going to be written, they're going to include for the war years. You know, and people who play a role in this war, their name would be added, you know, and it will indict them. You know, so for that, you know, the leadership decided, you know, they can't give money to a project, you know, that eventually go to, you know, put them in trouble.
Okay. Well, before we close, I'll go back to Dennis, and you can relay any questions from Facebook. Dennis, I believe you're on mute right now.
It's an incredible show. We want to say thank you to, I have an announcement here that I want to read even before we continue. And this is from the William V.S. Tubman University in Harper, Maryland County. The Dean of the Management Department at the university, Dr. Moses Jipley, he's heading a search team, a committee for some Liberian with masters in biology and another with masters in mechanical engineering. They are looking for people like that to teach at the university. So if you or you know someone who has a master's in biology or a master's in mechanical engineering, please talk to us. Talk to Dr. Moses Jipley or Dr. Amos Zumo. Just get in touch with Focus on Liberia so that you can be a part to contribute towards efforts at the university. Back to you, Danielle.
Okay, so Dr. Ngovo, thank you again for joining us. And if you have any last words at this moment, or I should say final statements.
Well, I would just like to say thank you again for having me for the third time. And it has been very informative. I hope those who participated, you know, either with questions or just watching, you know, we get to know the importance of knowing your history and also know the importance of this particular program, you know, that they will be able to, you know, do their best to support, you know, the idea and the project. As Dennis said, sometimes, you know, we may want to launch, you know, some sort of, you know, research, you know, and but that will require, as I said, money and other things. So, but it's a very good program, and that you keep Liberians, aware of their history, wherever they are, and some of the things they didn't know about Liberia, at least let them know, let them be informed, and so also to clear some of the doubt, or misinformation, that you have about Liberia, and so it's a very good program. I'm very glad that, I was able to make my little contribution, to it, and I will be around anytime, whenever, you will need me, and so thank you again for having me.
Yes.
All right. By way of announcement, next week, it's been first, the ride has been very incredible. We've had history from the 13th, 14th, and 15th century. We started with the earliest settlement of the land by Dr. Herbert Brewer. That was on February 3. We went into the second waves of migration up to the 19th century again. Dr. Brewer was back. Then we went to the early republic from 1847 to the 1920s by our guest tonight, Dr. Samuel Ngovo. Then from 1920 to 1980 was done last week by dr.nya Tayo. Today we have the post-coup Liberia with Dr. Samuel Ngovo again. Next week or next Sunday, we're going to have a case study of the presidents from Joseph Jenkins Roberts to George Mane Weah. A case study. Dr. Kia is going to be telling us everything about those presidents from Joseph Jenkins Roberts to George Mane Weah. He's also going to provide a ranking. Most of the American presidents are ranked. So during the show, you should come with everything ready to Dr. George Clay Kia, a former presidential aspirant. He's the professor at West Georgia University. He's going to be here to do a case study of all our presidents so that we know where each, what was the contribution of each of those presidents, what was their successes and their failures, and where they rank when it comes to all the presidents of Liberia. You sure don't want to miss it. And once again, we want to thank you. And as we go back to Danielle for closing.
Yes, thank you guys for joining us. We're here every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And Dennis already outlined our show for next week, Sunday, so we'll be back again. Thank you again to our guest, Dr. Samuel Ngovo, for giving us this history lesson. And I also just want to encourage all of we the Liberians out there to study our history and to take note. Our history lets us know what it is we've done wrong and what we've done right, so we can know how to move better in the future. And I definitely pray that we never repeat our past of civil wars. I hope that that is something that will remain in our past. And one thing that I hope we learned from the civil wars is that division has never brought us prosperity. I think right now I see a lot of division rhetoric being put out there, and I strongly suggest that we stray from that narrative and that we move toward and forward with one of unification, because together we are greater than when we're separated. So thank you again for joining us. Like us here on Facebook on Focus on Liberia, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Focus on Liberia. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week.